Hey, Stephanie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Good.
We're
Happy New
just,
Year to you.
Sophia and I just joined a few minutes early so we can just make sure the screen sharing works. So,
Perfect. Let me
yeah,
shut my door here one second. How does that look?
it looks good. I'm not at full screen. Give me 1 second so I can just make sure it truncates everything. Yeah. Great. Yep. So you can,
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
I think we're all set. And Stephanie, I don't know if you can still hear us as you're shutting the door, but just let us know if, I can't remember if Annika told us this, but after we're done, is the expectation? I think we're just going to sign off and say goodbye, right, Sophia?
I think it's completely up to you. You're welcome to stay. These meetings are open to the public, but you can also sign off. So it's
Okay,
completely up to you. It's not, these aren't closed meetings. So
got it. Okay, awesome. That's good to know.
and
All right.
we're waiting on, so it's just us in here, right?
Yeah, right now, yeah.
Okay.
Or at least I think so.
Yeah, because she usually shares our slides. So hopefully she'll join soon. If not, I'll just do it.
Yeah, we thought it'd be easier if we just advance our own slides.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And we use the Google platform, so we're very familiar with Google Meet and yada yada, Google Slides, so it's all good.
Perfect.
All right, and Annika. By the way, Annika told us that Delegate Boyce or somebody from her office is expected to join, but we weren't expecting. Yeah, I'm just saying, like we didn't coordinate with her on the presentation per se, so hopefully there'll be plenty of time for Q&A. And for her to say something if she does join.
Yep, sounds good. Yeah, that's what we were told by their office in the email, but we haven't. I don't know if they said anything more than that. Good morning. Good morning. Let me see if I can get. If I can. Second.
Hey everyone, sorry.
Good morning or good afternoon, Annika. How are you? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, now I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
I'm having weird connectivity problems in our office last minute, so very sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Just let me know if you need anything on my end, if you need me to share slides or anything.
Oh, thank you. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Happy New Year, everybody. How are you doing?
Happy New
Year, Dr. Karki.
In unison.
Still Happy New Year month, not too late. Miss Laughing, how are you doing? Always busy, busy, busy.
Are you talking to me, Dr. Karki? Sorry,
Yes, ma'am. How are you doing?
I thought about you because I went to the Eastern Shore for New Year's and went through Princess Anne.
Oh, how come I didn't know?
You know what? It's not, Dr. Lansing, is it letting you share your screen? For some reason, I'm having.
I haven't tried, but I can. I have the Google Slides pulled up.
So weird. Oh, wait, I've got it.
You got it? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Clearly, I need to get back into the swing of things. Okay.
I know. It's like all new and schools have been out and craziness.
Okay, everyone, we can get started as people start to join. My name is Annika Lefebvre. Thanks for bearing with me with the slow start. I am the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And if you're able to, please go ahead and put your name and your organization in the chat so we know who is present. And I will turn it over first to Dr. Lansing. And I don't think that Nancy is able to join us today, but I'll turn it over to Dr. Lansing to kick things off. And then from there, we have guest presenters from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance who are here to talk to us about the Wasted Food Reduction and Diversion Bill. And after that, we are going to get into some business talk regarding the 2025 recommendations from the Environment and Production Committee. All right, Dr. Lansing, take it away.
Hello, and thank you so much. And Happy New Year to everybody. Happy 2025. So we appreciate everybody being here. Happy second day of session. So hopefully people are, I know it's a busy time for everybody. So we appreciate everybody being here. As Annika said, we're going to start off today with a presentation on a specific bill. This bill was part of our recommendations last year. And it has been pre-filed. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that since it was part of our specific recommendations for this year and learn more about any changes that may happen. So we have people from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance to talk us through that. And then we're going to take a little peek at some of the differences we have for our report this year. So we'll go through the timeline. We'll go through how it's going to be structured this year, which is a little bit different from last year. And then we'll go through kind of revisit the presentations that we've had so far in 2024, what our goals were in the last report, and kind of start making teams for developing recommendations for this next report. So we're going to start on the report. It's the second week of January, and we're going to get started right now. So on our next report. So without further ado, we can go ahead and have, I believe Brenda and Sophia have slides to share. And so I will let them go ahead and get started on, oh, did you want to do the Future Harvest announcement? We missed that one. Maybe
I'll just say really fast that the Future Harvest Conference is next week. If anyone is able to make it, they're still accepting registration. And then these are the upcoming FSRC meetings for later this month. And the Communication and Coordination Committee, which meets every week during the legislative session, is kicking off their weekly calls on Monday, if you are able to join.
And those, again, are open to the public, as all of our committee meetings are. So, all right. I know people are introducing themselves. I know we have Brenda and Sophia here from the Institute from Local Self-Reliance. I'm not sure if anyone from Delegate Boyce's office was able to join.
Here, Meredith
oh,
Riley. I'm Delegate Boyce's new legislative aide. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful, Meredith. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. And
Absolutely. She should be on. The delegate should be on in just a moment. She's just running from another meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So Brenda and Sophia, we'll go ahead and let you share your screen. I think Annika, they're going to share their own screen.
Yep.
So we'll go ahead and let you share.
All right. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Thanks, Stephanie and Annika, for inviting us to present. Sophia's going to share her screen. So we prepared a few slides to kind of walk you through this bill. I just want to say a word about ILSR first, and Sophia and I are going to go back and forth, but Sophia, you can go to the next slide. I just want to say a word about the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We are a national nonprofit. We celebrated our 50-year anniversary just last year, and our lens, I think, is very unique in that we promote homegrown economies and fight concentrated corporate power, and we work in key sectors of the economy. We work in community broadband. We work in waste. That's where Sophia and I are in our Composting for Community initiative. We work in energy, and we do a lot of work in the retail sector. We have a big anti-Amazon campaign and anti-dollar store campaign, which of course with dollar stores and groceries does kind of relate to food system resiliency systems. And just by way of an example, I'll just share that our colleague and co-director of the Institute, Stacy Mitchell, authored article in The Atlantic just last month called The Great Grocery Squeeze, how a federal policy changed in the 1980s and created the modern food desert. And I just invite you all to check out that. It really just talks about how the rise of big chain supermarkets and the failure to enforce a key antitrust law, the Robinson-Petman Act in the 1990s, really gave rise to both rural and urban food deserts. So I think it'll give you a really good idea of where we come from. But today we're here to talk about House Bill 42, Senate Bill 134. Sophia.
Yeah, so this is the bill we're talking about today. It was pre-filed in both the House and the Senate. Bill sponsors Delegate Boyce in the House, and then Senator Hester in the Senate. So these are the two respective bills. The full title is Solid Waste Disposal Surcharge and Wasted Food Reduction, excuse me, and Diversion Grant Fund and Grant Programs. Long title, but it is the same in both the House and the Senate. And what it does is it creates 3 grant programs to expand infrastructure, capacity, and education around wasted food prevention, food rescue, organics recycling and composting, as well as transition away from disposable food serviceware. The first grant program is the Wasted Food Reduction and Diversion Grant Program. That's a competitive program, and there are a variety of eligible entities that can apply for funding from that program, and that is administered by MDE. 25% of the available grant funds are set to go to that program. 50% of the grant funds are set to go directly to counties in the form of block grants to work on those specific projects, and those are distributed annually in proportion to the county's population. And then the final 25% of grant funds are for the on-farm organics diversion and recycling grant program, which focuses on farmers, including urban farmers, and soil conservation districts are also eligible for that. And so all of this is funded by a $2 per ton surcharge on final waste disposal, which we'll dig into a little bit more as we get into this presentation. So this is this bill's, a version of this bill's 4th year in the Maryland legislature. We started in 2022 with House Bill 1070, House Bill 1139 in 2023, and House Bill 1318 in 2024, all sponsored by Delegate Boyce. And there have been a number of changes and refinements from year to year as we've been constantly tailoring it to Maryland's needs and landscape and working with stakeholders to do that. So between last year and this year is what I'll focus on here today. Some of the changes are that we added in that 50% of grant funding going to counties in the form of block grants. And that is for counties to use for infrastructure, programs, and education that reduce, rescue, and divert wasted food. And we did in previous years have a county opt-out option if they were to set up their own internal grant program. That has been removed in kind of in conjunction with this 50% block grant program. We also had to remove, in last year, we had the 4% of grant funding going to an existing school composting grant program. Unfortunately, that program is set to sunset right before these grant programs would go into effect. So We did have to remove that, but those entities eligible for grant funding under that program are also eligible for funding under this program. So we would be filling that gap. And then there are a couple of, we adjusted implementation dates and administrative costs with input from the comptroller. So Brenda, you're muted. Pass it over to you.
Thank you. So what would be funded? I think you'll be pleased to know that rescuing food to feed people, preventing food waste are high on the list of the priority projects to be funded. Also included is composting or food waste, organics recycling, which could also include anaerobic digestion, and including projects that would fund a transition away from single-use food serviceware. So things like putting in, dishwashers and more durable products and infrastructure would be covered. And these benefits extend far beyond just the economics. They include environmental, community, and job benefits. There is some language in the bill about funding priority for low-income areas, which could be urban and rural. And in general, the eligible projects, if you go to the next slide, Sophia, really follow the hierarchy of food waste. You're probably familiar with this hierarchy. This is ours, but EPA has one that's similar, that, first let's reduce food waste, then let's rescue edible food that can feed people and or livestock. This our hierarchy that the Institute for Local Self-Reliance produced kind of follows keeping the materials local and kind of closing that circular loop, if you will, within local regions and communities. So home composting, small scale on-farm composting. And the next few slides just kind of give an example of some of the projects that we think could be funded. Food rescue, there's already, we're seeing this in Maryland, kind of growing projects for cold storage and share tables. This is the top right is at photo on the left is Trinity Church. That's a cold storage for rescuing food. And then at Montgomery County, the Office of Ag at their Deerwood site, the bottom left, that's also cold storage that was recently installed and revealed, had ribbon cutting. Then schools, we're seeing more share tables. The top photo is actually from DC, which has been doing a lot, but the bottom is at Frederick County School in Maryland. The bill would, if you go to the next slide, could fund community education. It could help support small businesses. EcoCity Farms, the top three slides on the right, they not only have an urban on-farm composting, but they do a lot of outreach to students and youth and school groups coming in to learn about composting and growing local food. The Hobbit restaurant, I know that photo's a little dark, but that's on the Eastern Shore. That's a restaurant that's joined with other restaurants to combine to collect food scraps for local composting that could use some funding. Lunch Out of Landfills is a school-based program that's reducing food waste and recovering food to share, as well as promoting composting, any kind of food waste diversion from landfills. And on-farm composting, as Sophia mentioned, is pretty high up on one of the goals here, and it's both urban and rural. So here's just a few photos of some existing on-farm composting that's in Maryland. We've got Butler Farm on the two photos at the right. The photo on the bottom left and the middle bottom is Hidden Harvest Farm, community farm right in Baltimore. And then Semrex cow manure composting is on the bottom right. And I mentioned the transition away from disposables. I think DC's Ditch the Disposables small grant program is a fantastic example of how, when you have a small grant program, you can give rise to funding. They funded reusable serviceware in schools and catering and universities. And we're not talking a lot of money for these projects, but it can make a real big difference. And Upstream Solutions, I just have a screenshot from their Instagram feed, has been doing some research on reusables and lots of good data on the annual savings that result when you switch to reusables.
So getting into how the funding mechanism via the disposal surcharge works, just to visualize it, We start with waste generators, so individuals, households, businesses. They all send materials to be disposed. They set them out for haulers to pick up, and they typically pay for that hauling service in one way or another. Those haulers bring the materials to be disposed at landfills or incinerators, and they pay tipping fees at each of those sites, and then we would just add $2 per ton onto those tipping fees. And that $2 per ton is collected by the disposal facility and then sent over to the state wasted food reduction and diversion fund, which would be created by this bill. That would be done on a quarterly basis. And then that is the fund that funds the 3 grant programs that I described earlier. We'd be funding food waste prevention, food rescue, alternatives to disposal, and more. And then so the economic benefits to businesses and households and cost savings are more longer term, things including local jobs, alternatives to not be so reliant on disposal of organics. And so what this overall does is it nominally increases the cost of disposal in exchange for major investment in robust and locally driven food waste reduction and organics management infrastructure and capacity. And this is a way to ensure against disposal costs that will exponentially increase moving forward as landfills fill up and machinery needs to be updated. A little bit more on the estimated costs. There are 7 million tons of material disposed in Maryland per year. That means that a $2 per ton surcharge would raise $14 million per year for these grant programs. The revenue raised covers setup and administrative costs, so there isn't an initial burden on the general fund in Maryland. And it's also a reliable self-funding mechanism, which is especially relevant in the context of Maryland's current budget deficit, and not being able to rely on general fund appropriations, or we also probably can't expect to see federal funding in this area for the foreseeable future. So we estimated that for haulers to pass down those costs of the surcharge to waste generators, it would average out to $2.50 per person per year. And that's based on the Maryland total disposal rate of 1.26 tons per person per year. That is the disposal rate total per capita. So taking into account all waste disposed, including residential and commercial, so that $2.50 per person per year cost would be distributed between households, businesses, and all other waste generators. And then MDE did produce an estimate that businesses that generate roughly 156 to 162 tons per year of waste to be disposed could expect to see $300 to $325 per year. An argument in the past years that we've encountered is that this nominal surcharge would drive more waste out of state, potentially putting landfills in difficult economic situations. What we've done is worked with some of our partners at Maryland Clean Water Action to do some research on in-state and the surrounding state disposal facilities, and produce some estimated costs to haul to specific out-of-state facilities. And some of those things that were taken into account were diesel costs, driver hours, and states like Pennsylvania and West Virginia actually do have their own disposal surcharges that need to be taken into account as well. And we found that often it's more expensive to haul out of state than pay the $2 per ton. And we'd be happy to connect you with the folks that created this map if you're looking for more specific numbers for a specific county or landfill. This bill is built from research that we did on these 8 other states in the table here 4 years ago. Since we've also documented Tennessee and Arizona as some of these example states that have this same funding mechanism and set up to fund wasted food diversion. And these include some of our closer states like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Ohio. So we really wanted to take those best practices and lessons learned and make them fit for Maryland. And Brenda just put in the chat if you'd like to read more about those other states. And then just a quick word on the implementation timeline. If the bill were to pass, the surcharge collection would start July 2026. The grant programs would start in July 2027. And then the surcharge would be adjusted in accordance with the Consumer Price Index every 2 years after it starts in 2026.
All right, so just to wrap up here, this is our last slide, and this is just our current efforts and the support needed. Now we, think that this bill is aligned with the Food Systems Resiliency Council recommendations, mission, et cetera, but we understand that you can't vote or formally support or oppose bills as a council, but these are some of our current efforts to win support, and of course we welcome any help that you can offer as individual members. We are, it's in the Senate, it's coming before 2 committees, in the House, the Energy and Transportation. We are looking for advocacy to county governments. We definitely need county support. We are looking for an author to either write an op-ed on this bill for Maryland Matters or co-author it with us. We can provide writing support if anyone's interested in that. Clean Water Action, Sophia will put in the chat a link to their action alert, but open it up to discussion, and maybe it makes sense to punt to Delegate Boyce and her team to add anything we might have missed.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I'm Regina T. Boyce, delegate for Baltimore City, District 43A, and the Vice Chair of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. Thank you, Sophia and Brenda, for being a continued partner. We certainly are looking for support, and what support looks like to me is very thorough and quality testimony and quote unquote experts. So we don't need 500 people saying the same things, but what we do need is maybe some of the council, maybe some of our municipal and county partners who support this legislation, some of our farmers and urban farmers who support this legislation to talk about it and talk about really the need to build the infrastructure. And I think this is the main point here, is that we need to build this infrastructure to start creating that diversion we need so that we are quote unquote, well, to the point made earlier, we're not, deciding that we can just waste because we're going to compost it, but rather reduce food waste to begin with. And what we don't, we can certainly divert and create a new kind of soil and a soil amendment. So we are looking for partners. We're looking for sponsors. I want to take the opportunity to thank the department. I see Shannon on the call, the Department of the Environment and certainly the Department of Ag, who both have a role in this bill for supporting the concept of this bill, supporting the need, given that they both have roles in this realm of work. And so thank you so much. I want to publicly say that to you for being a partner and trying to figure this out. And so we thank you so much. I think you can't make a definite support or not, but we certainly would love, for instance, you could always send a letter of information or be a testimony as a group or someone who is just providing information so that our committee, which delves deep and likes a lot of information, can look at whether it's other states or looking at what we need and why we need it, and to kind of bring this into fruition so it becomes easier to start doing this. As you know, Prince George's County has been able to do curbside composting for about 150,000 of their residents. This type of grant, I think, would help them do more and to expand it to more of those individuals. We visited the site last year, and I tell you, I always joke when we went there, I was expecting to smell compost tea, which we know does not smell yummy, but the whole place smelled like Fig Newtons. It just had a lovely smell. And we loved learning about the process, learned how between Prince George's County and the MES, they have perfected this procedure. And I think in about 8 to 10 weeks, they have a really healthy, rich, dark, beautiful soil amendment that then once they put out for sale is gone. And right now they're breaking even, but it would be lovely for them, for instance, to get to the point where they cannot break even. They can actually be making a profit like all of the other places. So it's always like somebody's got to do it first. So again, thank you again to Sophia and Brenda again for supporting and pushing this bill for a 4th year. But again, certainly can use your support with good testimony, good facts, showing the need and showing what this can do if we actually just start. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Delegate Boyce and Brenda and Sophia for this overview of this really important bill. Again, this is something that the Food System Resiliency Council has had in our recommendations. And, so we're very glad that it's being presented again. And this thorough analysis is really great. I'm going to open it up to questions. Are there any questions that we have for Brenda, Sophia, or the delegate?
I think Senator Hester's staffer's on as well. If she would like to make any remarks, I didn't want to leave her out.
Yeah, thank you. Bridget, did you want to unmute yourself? I'm not hearing it. Yeah, so just so it is being sponsored by both Senator Hester and Delegate Boyce. So if she might want to, she might be stepped away, but if she wants to chime in, we would be happy to hear from her as well. Any questions from the group? Yes, Lisa, go ahead. Oh, Lisa, you're muted. It's okay.
Thank you. Is perchance ILSR or any other entity maybe going to put together some, I think I saw one thing on a slide, like either some social media or some, recommended actions for like food council members to take on an individual basis?
Sophia, you want to take that one? The short answer is yes, Lisa.
Okay. So we can expect to hear from you, like, here's, here are 3 things and some graphics or something you can use, something like that.
Yeah, and we do have a fact sheet as well. I don't think we shared the link, but it is in our, here you go, I'll put it in the chat. So the fact sheet is available, and we will be, there's more information in that web post as well. And we can absolutely follow up with specifics.
Thank you.
And for those of you that are a little bit new to this space as well, you can go on and go to the bill tracker with this and add this to the bill tracker so that you can see when it's coming up and when it's open for testimony. You can provide written testimony. You can sign up for oral testimony. You can do virtual testimony. So there's a lot of kind of options there in terms of ability to support. I would say written testimony is always welcome. That is wonderful, especially if you can add some expertise or personal stories to that, especially from a diversity of perspectives. Virtual testimony, I would say, is kind of okay, but sometimes it's kind of hard to hear the virtual testimonies, to be honest. And then usually for the oral testimonies, it's better to reach out to some of the groups that are organizing them, so that, as Delegate Boyce said, we don't want to have 50 people speak. We want to kind of organize it a little bit. So if you're interested in the oral testimony, just kind of reaching out and trying to have that organized is usually the best way, best path forward. But I think for now, it's really making the food councils aware of this in your county, making your local, if we have resiliency teams in the counties, making them aware on how this can affect resiliency. And just kind of, having support from the county governments as well as commissioners and state government is very important for us.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to add, if there's no other questions, Stephanie, just real quick, because I know you have other business too, is just on the cost issue, because in light of, there was a Washington Post article, I think yesterday or the day before, people saw it with, featuring Governor Wes Moore's trying to, cutting back, particularly funding for environmental programs in the state and not wanting to raise taxes, et cetera, that, Sophia presented like it's like a couple of dollars per household, but studies have shown, and this is EPA and USDA figures, that the average family of four spends $1,500 a year on uneaten food. And so we're spending more money wasting food than we would be if we invest in solutions. The other thing is Maryland's landfills, because our population we're one of the states where our population is increasing, the landfills are filling up much quicker than predicted even a few years ago. And so this bill is really investing in alternative infrastructure that will help counter undoubtedly rising disposal costs and the constant need to build and expand disposal facilities, which are extremely expensive. Landfilling and incinerators are the most expensive solid waste management strategies. So we're putting, there's a huge transfer of wealth that's already happened from taxpayers, consumers generated into the hands of disposal companies. And what we're trying to do is put that wealth into the hands of farmers and schools and the savings. So I just wanted to, as we, Lisa, you asked about resources and talking points. We will, a lot of this is in that fact sheet Sophia addressed, but these are the things we want to really hammer on, that this really makes economic sense for the state of Maryland in so many ways.
Any other, yeah, go ahead, Delegate Boyce.
I'm sorry. I just want to close out by quickly saying, I put it in the chat because this bill was out. It is HB 42. So it means that when we start bill hearings towards the end of this month, it will be probably among the first bills we hear the first week. And so there's interest to advocate and support the bill. And I know somebody said virtual is hard to hear, but I certainly recommend virtual because it is a form of accessing our democracy. And so that everybody can come down here and spend all day to then testify for 2 minutes. So please use it. And we make sure we can hear everybody. If we can't, we figure it out. But I think it's always best to, if you are testifying, you can always still send in a written testimony as well. And you can do a testimony testifying. And so the more information, again, the committee has, the best. So again, if you are looking to support and advocate, I would say do it soon, because we'll more than likely be hearing this bill at the end of the month, beginning of February. Thank you.
Can I add something really quick? Meredith from Delegate Boyce's office. I actually was just checking the Environment and Transportation Committee schedule, and it has been scheduled. This bill will be heard on January 29th at 2:30 p.m. It is in E&T. If anyone has any questions about how to submit testimony, please reach out through Delegate Boyce's email, and I can make sure everybody's set up that wants to testify however they'd like to. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Delegate Boyce, for attending, and for Meredith and Brenda and Sophia for the information that you provided. this is very important to this committee. And so we're hoping that by getting this information, again, they have links to the fact sheet and we'll add those to our notes as well, to our meeting minutes, so that you can, help just make other people aware. So if you can distribute this among your networks, we would really appreciate it.
And we'll send a PDF of our slides to Annika to distribute to you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to continue on with our meeting. So I know that Annika has some slides to share. So we are doing things a little bit different for the 2025 recommendations. So I'll let Annika go ahead and walk us through the plan for this year.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Lansing. This year, we wanted to get a jump on things and try to get organized early on for the committees. And so what we want to do today to kind of set the stage for 2025 recommendations is to talk through some of the issues this committee has discussed over the past several months, as well as some of the parking lot issues that were noted for the 2024 report, and revisit some of the recommendations from that report to see where there's interest in writing more recommendations or making changes to past recommendations. Something that I want to note before we get into that is the whole process for submitting draft recommendations has been bumped up a little because the council has decided to formally invite feedback from state agencies over a 2-week period in May. And so because of that, we would like to have a first draft to share with them by the end of April, which is why it's important to get this conversation going now. And we have some recommendations criteria in a template that are still being voted on by council members to adopt, but we've created these kind of guidelines to help streamline this process and strengthen the report overall and provide more consistency across recommendations.
So let me just add
go
a
ahead.
little information. Yeah. So the council will hopefully the council will adopt this recommendations. I think it's a really good thing. And really it's, if you look at last year's recommendations, this is really, there were some recommendations that had a lot of details. They addressed many different points, and other recommendations that maybe were lacking in those details. And so as Annika said, it's really the idea to provide consistency and to really have you think through for each recommendation, how does this affect diversity, equity, inclusion, which is part of our stated goals of the council. What evidence are you providing? What is the, and so there's actually, it's a score sheet here. So go back a little bit, Annika. So the idea is, how does it affect, what is the required criteria that we're saying that you need to have in there, and you need to check those. And then going through, what is the evidence provided? What is the diversity? So Annika, I don't know, just maybe to go through a little bit. The reason why I want to focus on this is because during this meeting, we're going to actually create work groups. And I want to make sure that these work groups that are looking towards our 2025 recommendations really have a clear understanding of the expectations for this year, which are going to be a little bit different than what we've done in the past.
Yeah, so the deadline to vote, if you're an appointed council member, is the end of this month. You should have received a reminder email from me yesterday, I think it was. And I am happy to send the documents along again to our appointed members. But these are supposed to be useful tools for the committee members to refer to when talking through what needs to be included in the recommendations and what considerations you may need to discuss or make sure that you don't overlook. So we have this criteria checklist, and we also have a template so that you can make sure that you are answering all of the items that we're looking for in this report, and we don't have to have as much of a back and forth between members of the committee and MDEM staff trying to connect all of the dots. So if you haven't voted and you're an appointed FSRC member, please go ahead and do that. But regardless, if this gets adopted or not, we hope that this is a helpful tool for committee members in coming up with all of the things that need to be considered when creating these recommendations for the report. Okay. The next thing I had on the list for us to talk about was just going through a meeting recap. One of the criteria that we encourage you to look at is if a topic has been actually discussed by this committee in the past year. And so I wanted to run through the meeting conversations that you have had so far since the report was published in July. Over the summer, you had F3 Tech come and talk about streamlining local food procurement processes. Maryland's Best also presented on an update on their website and how membership is going with local producers and being used by consumers. And they just had their expo yesterday. We're going to go into greater depth with all of these. We had the Harry R. Hughes Center for Agroecology talk about their Climate Smart Agriculture project. We had the Department of Labor talk about agricultural labor apprenticeships and the H-2A program. And in November, we had a conversation with panelists about institutional procurement for Maryland certified foods. And that conversation really looked at the public school system. So I've kind of created bullet points for the different meetings. I don't know if it's helpful to discuss them right now, but I wanted to just highlight the different topics that you all have discussed. And I think that really the goal for this is to kind of highlight all of the different topics that could be something that this committee wants to address. So I don't know, Dr. Lansing, if this is the best way to go about it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just briefly, because we want to make sure that we have time for discussion, but I mean,
Yeah.
briefly, the reason why we brought them in is this idea that we want more local food. That's part of our council, part of the reason for this council is to increase local food procurement. And so really trying to understand that process. And so they talked about this virtual aggregation network for local producers, and then this aggregation facility that they're going to incorporate into this 4P network. And then they anticipate at this time, again, this was early, I think it was in August or September we had this meeting, to work on to have a value-added coordinator. And again, one of the things we discussed is that the Maryland Department of Education also has its own thing. And so trying to kind of figure out how that might, how those might work together. And hopefully some of those conversations are still happening behind the scenes. Michelle, yes. So what are we saying, Michelle? Go ahead and just speak. Which topics are producer factors? Just the ones that we've had so far?
I thought it was really interesting when Annika provided the overview of the, speakers that were featured since the last report was produced, because it struck me that they were at the intersection of food production and the environment, most of them. So, or maybe all of them.
And that's a little intentional too, because of the bylaws adoption in September, the council revisited what was in the statute for them to address, and increasing the production and procurement of local foods is one of your 4 goals.
Yeah, it's one of the 4 bylaws that we have in there. And so I think that's how, when we were setting the agenda for these meetings, I think it was a little bit into that, but I do think there's obviously other things in environment and production that we could address as well. And that we'll have that conversation. Yeah, for sure. So going back one, just to Maryland's Best. Again, this is operated and run by MDA. And the idea is that it's for growers to link to their individual websites, to produce directly from consumers, to coordinate relationships, and the criteria was just kind of presented. So this is something that's happening at MDA. I think it was more just a presentation of how we can best support this and have more producers and more people and consumers as well aware of that this is out there, so that we can increase use of this service that our taxpayer paid for to get here. So next slide. And then we talked about the Climate Smart Agriculture and the Harry Hughes Center. And basically they have, they had a presentation this morning. Actually, I was at a Climate Smart conference today on campus, and really talked about the programs that they have in terms of, they've been giving grants for this Climate Smart program, and they've been writing reports. They had a report that came out on Climate Smart Agriculture. And so just understanding what their goal is really to understand those gaps. Like, what are the data gaps? What are the financial gaps? What education is needed? Where is their concern about willingness to adopt? What technical support is needed? What land use and energy concerns, variety, stormwater, planning for extreme events. So we actually had a conference all day here on campus talking about that intersection between stakeholders and university and Climate Smart, and how we can build some of those bridges. And the Hughes Center is kind of helping with that resiliency effort. And then we had about the workforce development. So in terms of the apprenticeship program, it's really interesting because I've been since we had this, I've been really invested in this a lot and looking through a lot of information on this apprenticeship program. And if you look at the apprenticeship program, they're in all different counties. A lot of them are like pipe working, electricity, electricians, construction, all kinds of different programs, but there aren't a lot of programs that are agricultural focused, especially when we think about the seasonality of agriculture. What is it? These are year-long programs where you have a sponsor that basically the government helps pay, Department of Labor helps actually pay part of it, but most of it's paid by the actual person that is employing them, the sponsors. And so we kind of went over with that program and maybe if there was an opportunity to have some agricultural based programs there. And then specifically talking about the H-2A work visas, a lot of these they're used in Maryland. A lot of them are on the larger farms where they bring, dozens of workers from one to the other to the other. You have to have housing for them. You have to meet certain standards. And so we went through kind of what the differences are between those, because we know that farm labor is a challenge, especially for smallholders. And the Maryland certified food. So again, looking at processing facilities to look at this Maryland certified food. So we had Moon Valley's Emma came and talked about some of the infrastructure, some of the grants that Marbitco has, and how farmers can take advantage of some of these programs and what they're doing. And then again, this 20% purchasing guide is challenging to achieve. And so that's again part of our statute, is helping to achieve some of those that law by state agencies.
And there's a bill that was pre-filed by Senator Hester and Delegate Charkoudian that's about local food purchasing in the public schools in Maryland too.
Yeah, to try to help facilitate that effort for schools specifically, not just agencies.
Thank you, Leslie. And then these are the parking lot issues that made it into the committee summary for the 2024 report. If we're including these, if they're topics that people want to revisit for the recommendations this year. So those are price constraints for local food procurement. Wholesale purchasing doesn't align with the actual input costs that farmers need to cover when they're trying to sell their food. Insufficient SNAP benefits for local food purchasing. Expanding Maryland market money was something that was suggested. And there is a bill this year too that is looking at that tangentially. And then untapped opportunities for food as medicine programs and local agriculture was the third one. So, and then these are a couple others that have come up more casually in conversation. We also, so the food date labeling, standardization, and consumer education, and local zoning and regulatory barriers for small and beginning farmers in Maryland. We also have all of these report recommendations from this past year. I don't want to get into all of them because I know that we're short on time and I really want there to be discussion and hear from everyone about what you're interested in addressing in this year's report.
Yeah, so just, yes, we will definitely make these slides available after the meeting. And so these are all, as we're going through these very quickly, these are all, again, you all should have copies of the report. It's online, but these were the ones that came out of our committee. There was quite a few of them that came out of our committee. And so sometimes we have the same, usually it's not going to be the same one, because especially we have new criteria for doing recommendations, but sometimes it's important to add more information, or we put that recommendation in the report again because it didn't get picked up, no movements happening on it, those types of things. If it's already in the report and there's movement happening, or we don't have any more information, we don't need to redo that recommendation, right? Because it's already there, we can still reference it. So we really want to be kind of forward thinking in terms of, are there recommendations that we had last year that we have more information and we really want to kind of push for to revise them for 2025. Okay, so that would be one, revision of 2024 recommendations for 2025. Number two would be the parking lot issues, or which also were included in some of the discussions that we had that we just went over. Are any of those, are there people that are really interested in going through and taking those forward to a recommendation? They were in our parking lot, or they weren't well developed last year, but we know it's important to do it for this year. Or are there other things that maybe tangential items that we've talked about that we really think need to be a recommendation? So what we want to do is Annika has developed this QR. Do you want to put the link in the chat as well? And then there's a QR code here for signing up for these work groups. So this is basically a Google form. And so it's the work groups that we kind of feel like there's 4 or 5. If you want to share, can you share that?
Oh, I thought I did.
No, just like share the form itself.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
Yeah, like share your screen with the form on it so that we can walk them through. So we want you guys to do this now. So click on this form. And basically what we want to do is we want to start the process now. It's very early, we know, but the timeline that we have is really tight this year. And so we want to start these groups now. So what we want you to do is click on this form. And then by next Friday, we want you to sign up for a work group. You can be in 1 work group, 2 work groups. All the work groups may be hard, but these are the work groups that have right now. And so she has all of the 2024 recommendations here already, as well as some of the new initiatives. And so if any of those you're interested in working on, please check them, because if nobody checks them, then we will not include them in the 2025 report. So even if you're like, I can't work on 10 recommendations, but these 10 are important, then check those. These are the things that you think should be in the report. And then we'll kind of whittle down, who's going to lead these different work groups and lead the report. Again, we are still waiting for the end of the month for the guideline to be voted on. But once that gets voted on, the idea is that your work group will help go through that guideline and develop all the evidence-based information and the that we need for including in the report in 2025. Questions?
Any specific topics that people are super excited about or not sure about?
Yes.
Go ahead, Lori.
Sure. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm excited to continue the conversation about agricultural labor and workforce development, because our recent survey of Montgomery County farmers once again rises that it's risen to the top of the issues faced by our farmers here. And hopefully we can continue this conversation, keep it going.
Yeah, and at this conference that I was in yesterday, it was yesterday and today, I left early, but one of the things that was talked about is not only is there this Department of Labor, but there's also the Conservation Corps, some federal programs. And so we actually had this conversation about understanding. I talked to an intern that she actually has a fellowship to do this. She's doing it for shoreline resiliency, but part of her work is to figure out where a workforce development program would go for shoreline resiliency. So we really talked about cataloging all the different programs to find out if there is a specific agriculture-based program, where's the best place to put it, right?
Mhm.
It may not be the Department of Labor. It may be Conservation Corps. There's one for forestry, for example. There's a workforce for that. There's all these different workforce programs. And I think just
Mhm.
understanding all of the programs and understanding what would be the best fit for something for
Mhm.
agriculture, because agriculture is a little different and that part of it's seasonal, right? And
Mhm.
so what are we doing to provide year-round wraparound services for those, interns and apprentices that sign up, at least for the Department of Labor? It's a year-long program, right? So if you sign up for this year-long program, how are we supporting you and your industry throughout the year?
Mhm.
And so it's a great, I would love to work on it, and I think it's really needed. So Martin, I'm sure you have thoughts about that as well. So please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to jump over to the regulatory hurdles and just offer some updates on that, but not if we aren't done with the topic we're already on.
No, I think we can move on. We only have a few minutes left, so please go ahead.
Yes, sure. I can run through it really quickly. So I don't know if this would necessarily be lead to a recommendation from this committee, but it's something MDA will certainly be bringing as an update every time we meet. So you've heard about, well, first of all, the value-added role that's now going on 18 months, and our engagement with Governor's Intergovernmental Commission on Agriculture, Maryland's Ag Commission. FSRC has presented to the Ag Commission. We've talked about these hurdles. We've talked about these challenges. We know that there's a lot of complexity as it goes from state to 24 various local jurisdictions when it comes to planning, permitting, and allowing agriculture, value-added agriculture, and all these enterprises surrounding it. So we are undertaking a statewide guidance document this year. That statewide guidance document is inspired by Maryland Department of Planning's 2022 forestry guidance document. If you're familiar with it, that is about a 40-page document that really just takes a statewide view of all of the faces of forestry for those local planning and permitting considerations, county to county. It's, agroforestry and large massive forestry is pretty different, and sometimes misconceptions get kind of gummed up. And so we want to do that for value-added agriculture and agriculture. So it's really important. We have actually also gotten a intern through University of Maryland's fellow program joining us in a couple weeks. So MDA will be out and about county by county engaging with regulators. So planning, permitting. We know environmental health is a big piece as far as the hurdles go. Although our intern's only with us through the spring, we're trying to commit to kind of finalizing and working through a document that could maybe be shared late summer. But really looking forward to that. It's going to be very engaging. We certainly hope to do some roundtables and some updates along the way. But we think that's probably the best way to start addressing this, at least from our agency's perspective, is an all-encompassing view, because a lot of the challenges are the state simply not offering enough guidance and perspective on what agriculture is now today. And that's confusing a lot of local jurisdictions.
Wonderful. That's great. I hope we can continue to get updates. I appreciate you offering that, because I think this is a really important, an important thing that we need to address is those restrictions and constraints for, especially for small producers. Other questions and comments? So, our next meeting, so what the kind of, I know it's 2:00 now and I want to stick to our time, but the goal is for everybody to fill out that form. Again, it'll go out in the minutes again, but to fill out that form and again, check anything that you think is important to work on for our 2025 recommendations. And then what we will be doing in our next meeting is taking the feedback from that form and then going through and making sure that we have our groups formed, making sure that we kind of have focus on working through these recommendations for the upcoming year. So in terms of the things happening in the announcements, so we have the Future Harvest Conference happening in the 17th and 18th. The Distribution Access Committee is on the 23rd. The FSRC meeting is on the 6th, and we'll have our State Ethics Commission annual training. Our next meeting is the 13th. And then again, every Monday is going to be the communication and coordination committees. So we appreciate you guys joining today. Please fill out the form, and we will see everybody on the 13th, if not before. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I'll follow up with the links.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.